It's Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show. We're live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here. Also live on Facebook and on YouTube with this important conversation. We want to welcome back to our studio Carl Berry. He's the Executive Director of Community Resources for Independence right here in Erie. Carl, good to see you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me back.
You recently, and again, I'm going to keep this tight because we want to get to the meat and potatoes of this subject. But you recently issued a Times News op-ed piece, and the kicker phrase here is your claim is that the in-home care system in Pennsylvania is, quote, on the verge of collapse.
Correct, and I do believe that your choice of phrasing of a kicker is important here because the result of our legislature and our administration kicking the can down the road many budget years after another has led us to the point where providers like Community Resources for Independence, it costs more to serve people with physical disabilities and elderly to serve them in their own home than what we are reimbursed through the state. How did we get to this point? Well, quite frankly, back in 2012, the Office of Long-Term Living did a rate study. And that rate study started with a preface from their consulting company, Mercer Consulting, that said, you really should do these rate studies on a regular cadence. And we recommend 2 to 3 years. That wasn't done. The next rate study was just done last year.
After 2012?
2012 to 2024.
Okay.
There were adjustments in between there, small, occasionally there would be a small, like 1.2%, 2% adjustments, but not every year. There were many. In fact, for the past 10 years, there was only 3 increases, and one of those increases was mandated by federal law. So in 2024, the Office of Long-Term Living did a rate study at the result of a number of advocates, including CRI and others, and they found, lo and behold, you really should be doing rate studies on a regular cadence, no less frequently than every 3 years. But the problem that we've had is the legislature has not been given raw data to understand the need to adjust these rates. So what happens? If the governor doesn't ask for an increase, it gets kicked down the road. That can gets kicked again. Ultimately, what happens is the problem becomes, I'm going to use the phrase, too big to solve.
Right.
So the current rate study, the one that was done in 2024 and on the governor's desk while he developed this year's budget proposal, so he was aware of it, said that if you look at the costs that are involved in providing services to people with physical disabilities in their home and the elderly individuals in their home rather than nursing homes, a little aside here, nothing wrong with nursing homes. They're appropriate for the right people. But there's a lot of folks that if they had a helping hand, they can stay in their own homes.
And isn't the narrative that if you could stay in your own home, it is much less expensive for society in general to keep people in their own homes? That's the preferred modality, wouldn't it be?
It's 1/2 to 1/3, sometimes 1/4 the cost of nursing home placement. And by serving people in their own homes, not only is it a higher perceived quality of life, but it also frees up nursing home beds for those who need it. We learned in the pandemic, we don't have the infrastructure for everyone to be in a nursing home. So it makes sense from a fiscal standpoint for Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars. It makes sense from a humanitarian issue. It makes sense from a disability rights standpoint. But we have not kept up with the cost of providing the service.
Let's back up, and again, we have Carl Berry with us from CRI. Talk about the nature of in-home care. What does that look like to someone who's uninitiated with this?
Pretty simple. I had mentioned there's a lot of folks, if they had a helping hand, could remain in their own homes than in a nursing home. You and I might need to have clean clothes. We might need to have food. We might, well, of course we need food, but we might need a little bit of help if we had a disability or we're getting older, needed a little bit of help with feeding, bathing, toileting. Nothing extreme that would need nursing home placement, but if they had a helping hand to help with simple things like feeding, bathing, or instrumental activities of daily living like laundry or errands, you and I might not think nothing of running down to our basement to throw a load of laundry into the washing machine. We can do it. We might grumble about it, but we can do it. A person who uses a wheelchair has to have clean clothes too, to maintain an independent lifestyle, independent body, independent home.
And this could be on a continuum of somebody that comes a couple hours a day, maybe even every other day,
Certainly.
to someone who needs 24-hour care, right?
Absolutely.
And everything in between.
Certainly, and the average in Western Pennsylvania of the hours of service is in the range of 20 to 30 hours a week.
Okay.
That's including some very intensive cases. As you go eastern Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area, that average increases for whatever reason.
I wonder what the geography has to do with it.
It's an interesting thing to look at. But
So anyway, so these are the folks that are doing this kind of work, whether it is, and it's not nursing care per se. It's help care.
It is health care. It is not under the direction of a nurse. It is something that you and I would do for ourselves. If we had a disability, we still need to do it, bathing, toileting, dressing, but we need a helping hand to do that. And that's our direct care workers. Those are the people who go into the clients' homes, work with them day in and day out to help them with that high quality of life, that independent supporting service. And I think they're, quite frankly, one of the most unsung parts of the health continuum.
And it's a high impact job if you look at just on a pure workforce development basis. There's like 1,000 jobs in this space in the northwestern Pennsylvania region that are unfilled right now.
Absolutely. Every day we at CRI, just like every other provider that we know across the entire Commonwealth, we have to turn away consumers, clients, patients every day because we don't have enough caregivers. Why do we not have enough caregivers? Primarily because a person might love this kind of work, but they can get paid more to work at a Sheetz or a Wawa or a Target or a Walmart. Those places all raise their prices to you and me, Joe consumer, to offset those increased costs. Those places also go to self-serve kiosks and self-checkouts to keep the costs down. Well, when you're hands-on, one-on-one with a consumer, a patient, you don't have a lot of those options. What has Pennsylvania failed to do? They have failed to keep the costs, the reimbursement rates up in line with the cost of providing services. We are unable to provide competitive wages to the direct care workers, and dang it, they deserve it.
Right.
That study I was talking about in 2024 looked at what are the actual costs. They looked at what does the state pay for similar services through other departments like the Department of Office of Developmental Programs, part of the Department of Human Services, and they looked at what do contiguous states pay for the same service. Well, when you look at the actual costs, the state's own auditors, the own Mercer Consulting Company said, wow, we're far behind.
Wow.
They looked at it, said, what do similar services get reimbursed from Pennsylvania for Office of Developmental Programs? We are about, let's see if I get this right, 60 to 75% behind what the Office of Developmental pays. And when you look at every state contiguous to Pennsylvania, every state around PA pays more to its providers. by, I'm talking like $5. West Virginia pays $5 more an hour than Pennsylvania. And they have about 1/3 the tax base. Yet they take care of their people with disabilities and their elderly better than Pennsylvania.
Why is that? What is some of the back and forth that you hear? Again, I'm sure you have these conversations with our local representatives and so on. What are you hearing, Carl?
Well, it's a combination of kicking that can down the road by not having the good data there. There needs to be a rate study on a regular basis. But that snowballed. That kicking the can down the road said, well, we're not going to give you a 2% increase even though it's needed this year. We're going to wait till next year. Next year comes, well, we're not going to give you a 4%. We're going to wait till next year. Well, you need a 7% this year to catch up. Well, we're going to wait and not do anything for you. And then we're going to let it snowball. So it becomes what I call too big to solve. And so legislators react to us saying, you know what? Your very own Pennsylvania auditors, your very own Pennsylvania consultants said that you need between a 23 to 30% increase to catch up. And the reaction I get from D's, from R's, from House, from Senate is, can't do it. And that's because we've kicked the can down the road for so many years, neglecting the services to people with disabilities and our elderly. And they're also forgetting our caregivers in that mix too.
This is what you wrote in the newspaper. Despite bipartisan agreement that in-home care is more effective, far less expensive than institutional care, the system is on the verge of collapse because the Medicaid reimbursement rate has remained stagnant while the cost of delivering care has soared. Are you concerned that, given the federal pressures on Medicaid right now, that this is just going to be even more of a too hard to solve kind of a situation for Pennsylvania?
Well, that's what we're hearing in the recent news articles that have come out this week. There has been some content about, well, let's have a continuing resolution budget. In other words, put off passing a Pennsylvania state budget for 1 month, 3 months. Some are talking 6 months to find out what's happening with the federal Medicaid payments. What does that do for us? That kicks the can down the road again and makes the problem even bigger to solve. Now, I direct the legislators to a study that they themselves commissioned about a year ago that was just released Friday the 13th from the Legislative Budget and Finance Committee, a joint committee of the Pennsylvania General Assembly, a study pursuant to House Resolution 165, Home and Community-Based Services. And the result of that study is, lo and behold, they recommend the legislature has a regular rate review, no less than every 3 years. Have an index, adjust for the cost of living adjustment in between there. Work with your work with your stakeholders to develop that cost model so that all the costs are included and it's all transparent. Exactly what we've been advocating.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, that's exactly what is in the Office of Long-Term Living study from Mercer Consulting that the governor had when he made his budget proposal and chose not to follow. And that's exactly what, in 2012, Mercer Consulting told the Office of Long-Term Living. You really should do this or you're going to have a problem that's too big to solve.
Do you think, I mean, again, there's a lot of voices in Harrisburg. Mm-hmm. Do you think that this sector, and again, it's not just you and direct care professionals. I mean, we're hearing the same conversation about childcare. Mm-hmm. And we still are hearing about basic ed, but basic ed has the teachers union, very powerful lobby. They have the school board, the heads of the school boards, powerful lobby. Are you having to lobby up some more? I mean, this is kind of what you're doing right now, right?
We as in-home caregiving companies like Community Resources and many others around are prohibited by law from lobbying. Okay. We're not allowed to lobby. Compare that to nursing homes. Nursing homes are reimbursed on a cost basis, meaning that they tell the state, this is what it costs to operate this year. These are all the expenses I had. I need this much plus more for next year. And one of those costs includes lobbying expenses and profit.
Wow. Would you guys benefit from a situation like they're trying to do with childcare, where they're offering like $1,000 signing bonuses and things? I mean, is there any of that conversation going on for direct care?
We need to attract more people into the care. Let me rephrase that. We need to incentivize people who want to be caregivers to stay in the caregiving industry.
It is the retention situation.
It's the retention.
Isn't it? Wow.
Now, to answer your direct question,
Yeah.
Joel, we have at CRI, and many providers have offered incentives, sign-on incentives. At the time of the pandemic, that's what everybody was doing. And what we found is people would go from provider to provider collecting those $1,000 sign-on bonuses. As soon as they earned them, they moved on. Those aren't the people we want as caregivers. We want people who have a passion and a drive to be a caregiver for another human being and make a difference in their lives. But those are the people who say, I love my job, Carl. I love my consumers, but I have to put food on the table for my babies.
Everything is more expensive.
Everything's more expensive.
Wow. All right. So we got like a minute left with Carl Berry. Talk about what people can do, because I would imagine in our listening audience, there's every listener has a connection with someone that receives these services, whether it is from you guys or from the Barber National Institute. I mean, you think about the whole plethora of folks that are doing direct care, right?
Correct.
So, what would you suggest that they do?
Well, first of all, keep in mind that every one of us will be disabled at some point in our lives, many through the aging process. If you are interested in having a helping hand so that you can stay in your own home, your own community, and be in control of your own life with that helping hand, you need to step up right now and help protect this service. Second thing I would say is, if you are a person with a disability, perhaps a person with an aging related disability, or perhaps you're born with an accident illness, you need to get actively involved in fighting for your civil rights. For more than 20 years, perhaps 30 years, individuals have not had to say, hey, what about me? Companies like CRI and many others have always been the cushion, the go-between. We need consumers, people with disabilities, to make their voices heard with their legislators to say, hey, I rely on these services, protect these services. It makes sense from so many angles.
You really get the sense that this is part and parcel of someone's civil rights. I mean, when we're talking about civil rights movements throughout history,
disability rights are civil rights.
There you go. We're going to leave it there. Again, people should go to Go Erie to look up your article there, and it's just highly important that we continue to have this conversation. Carl Berry, the Executive Director of Community Resources for Independence in Erie. You can find out more. What's the website again?
www.crinet.org, crinet.org.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Joel.